June 12, 1943. 1:40 a.m. Above a dark wind-swept plain 5 miles east of Kerch, Crimea. The sky is a black sheet stitched with a single pale moon. Below it the German camp sleeps with the careless confidence of men who believe engines and searchlights mean safety. In the cramped cockpit of a Polikarpov PO-2, Lieutenant Olga Morozova's fingers are already numb from the night, though her face is flushed with the radiator heat that leaks into the open cockpit. The PO-2 breathes around her. A rag and wood biplane that smells of tar, oil, and canvas seams, every stitch a testament to Soviet improvisation. Behind her, Navigator Sergeant Anya Petrovna squints at a folded map by the little glass of the NAV hatch and whispers bearings into the darkness, her voice swallowed by the roar of the engine and the wind. Up in the sky, the regiment's formation is a ragged string of pinpricks. 8 shadowed biplanes in staggered intervals, each a ghost against the low clouds. The pilot in the lead, Senior Lieutenant Yevdokia Dina Bershanskaya. The regimental commander, a woman whose uniforms are as decorated as the medals the men sneer at, keeps her hand steady on the throttle. Her eyes, hard and watchful, scan the black rectangle of the earth for telltale halos, a strip of light behind the barracks, the dull sheen of metal roofs, the darker smudge where the fuel tanks sit. Every pilot in the 588th has learned to read ground like a book. The way a guard cigarette makes a flare, the rhythm of a searchlight sweep, the soft horizontal lines of tents. Tonight, they are not looking for a runway. They are hunting silence. You feel the machine beneath you. The PO-2's engine, a simple, reliable Shvetsov M11, is a living thing. It hums in the bones of the fuselage and talks back through the pedals. It is also, by design and necessity, loud and conspicuous. The trick the night witches perfected is not the building of stealth into cold metal. It is the harnessing of the only other thing the night offers, air itself. As the lead calls the code, the throttle eases, then snaps to a peculiar, practiced cut. For a beat the engine falters. Then the sound collapses into near silence. Wood creaks. The canvas shivers. The propeller's pitch changes as the wind takes over. The PO-2 slips into a glide. It is the kind of silence that makes the world feel thin and fragile. Inside the cockpit, voices reduce to the soft click of straps, the rustle of paper, the distant breathing of a woman trying to make herself smaller in a seat that never promised comfort. Outside, the air roars past the struts as if the plane were a falling leaf. Slow enough that night insects pass bewildered beneath the lower wing. Down below, the Germans can only hear the usual things that live in war. Alarms, wheels on gravel, the distant bark of a sentry dog. They cannot hear a wing that does not sing. They do not hear the PO-2 glide like a broom on its way to sweep ashes. The mission tonight is low and intimate. Small sacks of 50-kilogram bombs carried under the wings, wooden boxes of TNT lashed to the reinforced racks. The PO-2 was never meant for bombing. It is a crop duster turned into an instrument of nocturnal vengeance. Lieutenant Morozova feels the weight of the payload as a hand on the floorboard. She knows exactly where each bomb sits, how the plane will fly with that extra mass. The navigator gives the signal. 3 ticks on the altimeter, the hush-hush code the regiment uses when switching from powered flight to gliding. The crew below has practiced this in ice, over fields, in the dead hours when the rest of the world is asleep. There is terror in the silence, too. Cut an engine and you inherit the sky's mercy. The PO-2 has no armor, no self-sealing tanks, and its slow speed makes it a juicy target for anti-aircraft bursts when daylight reveals it. But at night, in this practiced hush, it becomes something else. A shadow that can unmake a routine. Morozova feels the plane drop a fraction, then settle into a steady descent like a bird folding, nose eased, flaps set to the saved angle, hands steady. The glow of Kerch spreads below. A sleeping camp, 20 latrine lights glowing like a cluster of fireflies, the faint grid of parade grounds and vehicle sheds. The first target is a fuel dump, mapped from the reconnaissance the week before. If it goes, the trucks behind it will be stranded for days. The pilot's eyes narrow. They have no radar, no electronic aids, they have charts, compasses, and the bones of instinct learned in the same snowdrifts and factory floors that shaped their childhoods. Beside her, Anya counts in a low, metronomic voice that is more ritual than navigation. 1, 2, 3. Olga eases the release lever. The wooden block clicks, the ropes give. The bomb falls away from the wing like an extra limb letting go. For a breathless second everything is suspended in a conspiracy of air and time, a bag of explosives arcing, the canvas wings humming, the moonlight catching the edges of the fuselage. Below, the impact is small but savage. A short, precise bloom of flame, then the immediate cacophony of alarms. In the camp, men start. Feet. Voices. The metallic clatter of equipment being hurriedly manhandled. On the wing, the PO-2 is already 100 meters downrange, the glide broken by a sudden wrench of the engine as Olga snaps the throttle back to life. The little radial coughs again, then roars. The noise returns, but it is too late. The night which has already become a rumor in the dark. This was not merely flying. It was theater. Choreography. And a form of psychological warfare. The Germans would later call them Nachthexen, night witches. Because, in the words of an enemy soldier, the sound of the engine cutting and the silence afterward was like a witch's broom. The name was meant for contempt. The women of the 588th wore it like a badge. In that patch of Crimean night, as the small planes circled and came back for a second and a third run, there was a quiet pride in the cadence of those maneuvers. Each glide a calculated risk, each engine cut a pact with the night. The first explosion still blossoms below when Senior Lieutenant Dina Bershansky motions with her wings. A subtle rocking left, then right. Signaling her second wave to begin their approach. The sky, once so still, now trembles with German shouts, the slamming of barrack doors, the clang of boots on metal steps. But from above, the camp is still just shapes. Rectangles of buildings, the timid glow of lanterns, and the sharp white arcs of searchlights that begin stabbing upward like accusing fingers. Bershanskia keeps her PO-2 high for now. Circling like a patient hawk. Her navigator Captain Zoya Pashkova murmuring altitude and bearing as calmly as if they were reciting prayers. Down at a lower tier, Junior Lieutenant Irina Sabrova and her navigator, Nina Yulianenko, peel away from the formation. Their canvas biplane trembles in the cold. Irina's teeth chatter not from fear, but from the rush of air blasting through the open cockpit. The goggles on her face are already beaded with dew, and she wipes them with the back of a gloved hand. Nina taps her shoulder twice. The signal that they're approaching their glide point. Irina's fingers move automatically. Throttle closed, mixture adjusted, magnetos off. The engine sputters, then dies into silence. The transformation is instant. A moment ago, the PO-2 was a clattering wooden dragonfly. Now it is a whisper. Wings breathe. Rigging wires hum. Even the moonlight seems louder than the aircraft itself. Beneath them, the German camp reacts like a wounded animal. Klaxons blare, guards shout contradictory orders, boots scatter across gravel in chaotic paths. Searchlights sweep erratically, chasing ghosts. They have no idea that death is drifting toward them without a sound. Left 40, steady, hold. Nina's voice is a thread in the darkness. Irina banks gently, feeling every change of the wind through her fingertips. The fuel dump is already burning from Olga's strike. A column of thick smoke rising like a black tower, faint orange pulsing at the base. Their target is different. The artillery encampment at the northern corner of the camp. Cannon sleep there, lined in neat rows. Each covered with tarpaulins that glow pale beneath the moon. Destroying them now will cut the Germans' planned morning barrage before it ever begins. Below, a German officer yells orders. Stabbing at the sky with a flashlight as if trying to command the darkness itself. Soldiers scramble to the anti-aircraft guns. Squat, angular, black against the flames. Irina watches their movements with a hunter's calm. They scan high, searching for the roar of engines, for the glitter of metal wings. They never think to look low, or listen for nothing at all. Nina gives the release countdown with the steady certainty of someone who has practiced it 1,000 times. 3, 2, 1, Irina pulls the lever. The wooden release clamp snaps open, and two 50-kilogram bombs fall cleanly, tumbling quietly through the dark. They are small things, barely the size of satchels. But the PO-2's gliding precision gives those bombs a surgeon's accuracy. Irina watches them fall, the shapes shrinking, then disappearing into shadow. A heartbeat later, the ground erupts. Not one blast, but two. Staggered, ripping through the artillery line with surgical cruelty. Fire rolls across the tarps, turning them into ghostly white sheets for a split second before they collapse into flame. German gunners scatter. Some dive for cover. Others run blindly, not knowing where the next silent plane might be. Irina restarts the engine with a practiced flick. The M11 radial coughs, spits smoke, then grumbles awake. The sudden roar causes a German searchlight to whip toward her. A column of white light slides across the plane's lower wing. Dazzling her goggles for an instant. She jerks the stick, dropping into a shallow dive. Trusting instinct more than anything else. A streak of tracer fire zips past her left wingtip. Bright, angry, futile. The PO-2's slow speed, mocked endlessly by German pilots, becomes her salvation. The plane putters along at barely 100 miles per hour, slower than many cars on a modern highway. It is too slow for German night fighters to lock onto. The Messerschmitts overshoot them easily. Often stalling or ripping past like meteors, unable to match the biplane's gentle crawl. But on the ground, the Germans still try. One gun crew rotates a Flakvierling, a 4-barrel anti-aircraft cannon, and begins spraying the sky in a frantic upward arc. Tracers carve long lines through the darkness. Irina feels the air shudder around her. A few rounds snap past like invisible fists. But the PO-2 glides, dips, and slips through the chaos as if it were part of the night itself. Good hit, Nina says, peering back at the rising flames. Very good hit. High above them. Brushanskia watches the twin explosions with a tight smile. She lifts her flare pistol, fires a green streak into the sky. The signal to begin the regiment's signature tactic, carousel bombing. One plane after another will dive, glide, drop its payload, restart its engine, and climb. Cycling like gears in a machine designed to shred nerves. It is not just bombing. It is psychological warfare at its most intimate. The Germans will hear engines, then silence, then explosions, over and over again, until every man below feels hunted by the invisible. The second wave circles back, preparing for their next runs. Brushanskia adjusts her gloves, nods to Pashkova, and dips her nose toward the firelit camp. Her plane begins its own descent. As Brushanskia leads her PO-2 into its descent, the air around the camp crackles with a manic energy. Searchlights ripping back and forth. Officers shouting orders that collapse into each other. Engines of hastily started trucks sputtering awake. But for all the noise below, the sky itself remains eerily controlled. The women of the 588th are not simply flying sorties. They are conducting a symphony. Each plane moves in rhythm. Each glide timed like a heartbeat. Each bomb drop executed with the cold precision of surgeons cutting into darkness. Bershanskaya taps Pashkova's shoulder. The navigator nods, leaning into the chart illuminated by the faint glow of her knee lamp. They have practiced this maneuver so many times the motions weave themselves. Throttle down, altitude shift, the subtle yaw to catch the crosswind coming off the ridge. The engine cuts with a choking gasp. Then the glide begins, smooth and whisper-soft. The world goes quiet. From the ground, the silence is a villain. German soldiers freeze mid-stride, eyes scanning the sky for a threat they cannot hear. A frightened young officer shouts at a gun crew to aim everywhere, his voice cracking, his hands trembling as he gestures wildly at the open sky. But searchlights capture nothing except drifting smoke from the burning fuel depot and the fluttering remains of canvas tarps. Above them, Bershanskaya's biplane drifts like a paper kite. Her target is the vehicle park. Rows of trucks, motorbikes, and supply carriers lined carefully like toys on a shelf. Destroying them won't just cause chaos, it will starve the German front line of mobility for days. Pashkova raises her hand, counting down silently even though Bershanskaya cannot see her face behind the windscreen. The two women have flown together for years. Long enough that their coordination feels like instinct. 3, 2, 1. A single 50-kilogram bomb falls, slicing downward in absolute silence. A heartbeat later the vehicle yard ignites. A line of trucks erupting one after another in a chain reaction of fuel tanks and ammunition crates. Flames climb so high they paint the underside of the clouds. German silhouettes scatter in every direction. Some diving into ditches, others sprinting toward the command bunker. The chaos is so thick that no one notices the brief spark of Bershanskaya's engine kicking back to life as she climbs into safety. Far to the west, another PO-2, flown by Sergeant Lydia Kuznetsova, begins her run. She flies lower than the rest, trusting the dark band of smoke drifting from the earlier explosions to hide her. A German spotlight nearly catches her tail, sweeping dangerously close. Her navigator, Katya, grips the cockpit edge with white knuckles. Lydia cuts the engine. The spotlight passes harmlessly over empty sky. Now the biplane glides directly over the mess hall and field kitchen, where German cooks, panicked, disoriented, are attempting to douse flames from an earlier blast. The kitchens are vital, without them, the camp loses its ability to feed hundreds of men. But that is only the surface. The Night Witch's no destruction here deals a brutal blow to morale. A hungry army is a broken army. Katya releases 2 bombs at once. They hit the mess hall with a muffled double thud before expanding into a rolling fireball that swallows tents, cooking equipment, and supply crates in seconds. German soldiers dive flat as debris rains down. Metal pots, fragments of timber, a scorched stove door spinning like a coin across the dirt. Someone yells that there must be dozens of Soviet bombers in the air. Someone else screams that they're invisible. The fear tightens like a fist around the entire camp. And then the engine sounds return. A PO-2 restarts somewhere above. Another glider angling for a strike. A moment later, another engine cuts off, plunging the field back into predatory silence. The rhythm becomes maddening. Roar, silence, boom, roar, silence, boom. A carousel of terror. Each time the Germans strain to hear engines, the planes fall quiet. Each time they prepare for silence, engines burst awake again. Confusion becomes its own weapon. Some soldiers fire wildly into the sky, their tracers curving upward into nothing. Others huddle behind supply crates that soon ignite, forcing them to scatter again. Lieutenant Olga Morozova, having completed her first run, swings wide for another. Anya, her navigator, steadies a fresh bomb on the rack. The women are exhausted. Cold biting at their lips, eyes stinging from smoke, fingers stiff from gripping controls. But they do not falter. Night witches do not break formation unless ordered. They do not abandon the carousel. On the third approach, Anya spots something. Officers clustering near the command tent, trying desperately to coordinate a counterattack. She taps Olga sharply, 3 quick blows. Olga banks left, then dives. The canvas groaning as the PO2 cuts through turbulent air warped by heat from the fires. Engine off. Glide. Another bomb falls silently. The command tent folds inward like a dying lung as the blast throws officers off their feet. Radios sputter. A generator catches fire. The entire nerve center of the camp collapses in under 5 seconds. With command in ruins. The Germans break. Units run in conflicting directions. Anti-aircraft crews abandon their guns. A squad tries to tow an undamaged truck out of the flaming vehicle yard, only to be swallowed by the spreading firestorm. Above them, the night witches continue their rotations, disciplined and unhurried. By the time the last bomb falls, dawn is threatening the horizon, and smoke blankets the camp so heavily that searchlights look like weak lanterns behind fogged glass. The PO2s regroup into a loose formation. Engines sputtering as they climb back toward friendly lines. They leave behind a camp in ruins. But more importantly, a camp convinced it had been haunted. The Germans will spend weeks repairing the damage. They will spend years remembering the silence. Smoke rolls upward in thick, black pillars, staining the retreating night like bruises across the sky. As the PO2s begin their slow climb northwest, the women brace for the most dangerous part of any raid. The escape. Bombing in silence is one thing, surviving the return is another entirely. Senior Lieutenant Bershanskia scans the sky behind her, squinting past the frost clinging to her goggles. "They'll scramble fighters," she mutters to Pashkova, her voice barely audible over the engine. Pashkova nods. They both know what's coming. The Germans have finally shaken enough panic from their bones to think clearly again, and they will throw everything they have at the ghosts that just shredded their camp. Already, the first signs appear. A distant engine roar, deeper, harsher, far more powerful than the soft purr of a PO2. To the southwest, a Messerschmitt Bf 110 night fighter claws into the sky. Its twin engines glowing faintly like angry eyes. The Germans call the night witches Nachtwechseln with contempt, but their fear is real enough that they've demanded specialized night patrols just to kill these women. Irina Sabrova hears it before she sees it. A thudding vibration in the air, growing steadily. She knows that sound. Everyone in the 588th does. It's the growl of a predator built to tear apart anything slow and fragile. The PO2 is both. "Nina," Irina says quietly. "Hold on." The Messerschmitt bursts through a cloud bank, sleek and sharp, floodlights attached under its nose. Its pilot, a veteran with dozens of kills, dips his wings, searching for movement. He expects fast planes, metallic glints, the roar of engines. What he finds instead is nothing. The night witches cut their engines again. 3 PO2s vanish into the dark like sparks blown out by wind. The Messerschmitt pilot curses. Banking hard, losing altitude as he overcorrects. The PO2s slip beneath him, drifting like feathers. The German fighter shoots past at nearly triple their speed, overshooting by hundreds of meters before he can even react. He wheels around again, trying to reacquire his targets. Below him, Irina glides silently through a pocket of smoke drifting from the burning vehicle yard. Nina's fingers grip the bomb rack, though they have nothing left to drop. It's simply instinct, something to brace against as the world narrows into a tunnel of fear. Irina whispers, just a little lower, and noses the plane down. The PO-2's wings tremble. A crosswind tugs at the canvas. She feels the plane's soul. Its quirks, its stubbornness. Like she's holding its hand. The Messerschmitt slices overhead, too fast, too rigid, a metal beast trying to hunt a shadow that barely exists. Another PO-2 is not as lucky. Sergeant Lydia Kuznetsova's plane catches the edge of a searchlight. A thin white beam suddenly becomes a spear, painting the PO-2 with blinding brilliance. The Messerschmitt snaps toward it like a wolf lunging at prey. Katia grabs Lydia's shoulder, shouting something that's lost to the wind. Tracer fire erupts. Lydia yanks the stick right, then down. A controlled stall, a trick that only the ridiculously slow PO-2 can survive. The biplane drops like a stone for a split second. Wings rattling. Fabric groaning. The Messerschmitt overshoots again. Its tracers slicing the air where the PO-2 had been a heartbeat earlier. But the searchlights don't lose her. 3 beams now converge on Lydia's plane. A triangular prison of light. There is no engine to cut. She is already gliding. She has nothing left to drop. Her only weapon is invisibility, and that has evaporated. Hold on, she cries. Katia shuts her eyes. The Messerschmitt comes around for another pass. And then, a miracle born of improvisation. A second PO-2, flown by Corporal Marina Raskova, slides across the beams deliberately, baiting the lights toward her. She waggles her wings, taunting the search crews. It's insane. It's heroic. It's exactly the kind of mad courage that defines the regiment. The beams shift. The Messerschmitt snaps toward Marina instead. Go Lydia. Now. Katia screams. Lydia dives into the sudden pocket of darkness. The fabric wings shudder. The struts creak. The plane drops dangerously low, mere meters above the tree line. But in the cover of night, she becomes invisible again. Marina, meanwhile, takes the full brunt of the chase. The Messerschmitt roars behind her, firing short, vicious bursts. She cuts the engine, restarts it, cuts it again. A pattern of hesitation that confuses the German pilot just enough to keep him guessing. The PO-2 is too slow to aim at. Every time the fighter lines up a shot, Marina slips beneath him like a stubborn gnat. But she cannot keep this up forever. Finally, as Marina schemes over a small ravine, the Messerschmitt breaks off. Not because he gives up, but because he is running low on fuel. He banks away, climbing toward base to avoid risking a crash in the dark. The sky goes quiet again. One by one, the PO-2s regroup. Their silhouettes wobbling in the moonlit haze. No one speaks. They simply look at each other. Heads turning across the open cockpits. Confirming they're still alive. Even Marina manages a weary salute, her scarf whipping in the wind. Bershanskia's voice crackles softly over the radio. Calm. Steady. The voice of someone who refuses to let fear be the final word. Formation. Home route. No errors. The biplanes bank northwest in a gentle arc leaving behind the burning German camp. The flashing searchlights, the echo of tracer fire. The night slowly retakes its stillness. The witches have survived. Barely. The sky softens from black to a bruised violet as the PO-2s limp homeward. Dawn doesn't rise all at once. It seeps into the world, bleeding along the horizon in pale streaks. To the women of the 588th, this is the most fragile hour. The adrenaline is fading. The cold is sinking in. The night's fear and triumph settle into a heavy, aching fatigue. Senior Lieutenant Bershanskia keeps her plane steady despite the stiffness biting into her shoulders. Pashkova, her navigator, has stopped reading bearings. She simply rests her chin on the edge of the cockpit. Eyes glassy with exhaustion, letting the familiar ridgelines and dark fields confirm the path home. They've flown this route so many times it lives in their bones even when their minds go numb. Behind them, the remaining PO2s stretch out in a thin, uneven line. The formation looser now, wobbling tiredly as the women fight sleep. Cold. And the lingering echo of terror. One by one, the engines cough, sputter, regain rhythm. The battered machines feel almost alive. Like old horses pushing through the last mile to the stable. In Olga Morozova's cockpit. Anya Petrovna hugs her coat tighter around her neck, teeth chattering. She hasn't spoken in minutes. Olga glances back and manages a weak smile. "You still with me?" she calls. Anya musters a nod. Her hair is stiff with frost. "You owe me hot tea when we land," Olga adds. Anya lets out a brittle laugh, the kind that comes from sheer relief. "I'll give you the whole pot." A few planes to the east, Lydia Kuznetsova and Katya fly in silence. The searchlights, the Messerschmitt, Marina's intervention. It all replays in their minds like a flickering film strip. Katya's gloved hands still tremble against her knees. Lydia reaches back and squeezes her navigator's wrist. "We're alive," she says quietly. "And that's enough." Katya nods, though her eyes stay fixed on the horizon. Marina Raskova's plane limps along a few hundred meters behind them. One wing slightly patched with soot where a tracer round grazed the canvas. She flies with one hand and rubs her aching forearm with the other. Muttering to herself about the ridiculousness of baiting a fighter plane with a crop duster built from plywood and fabric. But beneath her grumbling, pride glows like a coal. It was a stupid move, and exactly the right one. As the first sliver of sun crests the earth, the outlines of a familiar tree line emerge. Beyond it lies the makeshift airstrip. A dirt field reinforced with planks, surrounded by dugout shelters, fuel barrels, and half-collapsed tents. Smoke from the field kitchen drifts upward in lazy spirals. The camp looks small, almost fragile from above, but to the women of the 588th, it is home in the way only a place repeatedly returned to under threat can be. Bershanskia circles once. A slow, measured loop scanning for signals. A green flare arcs upward from the ground crew. Safe to land. One by one, the PO2s descend. The landings are clumsy. Fatigue makes hands heavy, eyes slow to adjust. The first plane hits the ground with a hard bounce, skidding before the pilot corrects. Another rolls to a stop at an awkward angle, its left wheel sinking slightly into the morning soft mud. But each plane that touches down is greeted with shouts, waves, and frantic mechanics rushing forward. Olga's PO2 comes in next. The wheels scrape over the planks, jolt, and settle. Anya doesn't wait. She practically tumbles out, collapsing onto the grass with a ragged laugh of disbelief. Ground crew rush to help, pulling the bomb racks free, checking struts for bullet holes, running their hands over the canvas like worried doctors. Lydia lands soon after. Katya steps down on unsteady legs. A mechanic hands her a cup of steaming barley coffee the moment her boots touch dirt. She clutches it with both hands as if the warmth alone might anchor her back to the world. Then everyone turns to watch Marina's damaged plane. It wobbles on approach. One wing dipping lower than it should. For a heartbeat, no one breathes. Marina flares too late. The plane hits the ground hard. Wood splinters. Canvas flaps. The PO2 skids sideways in a spray of dirt before shuddering to a halt just meters from a stack of crates. Medics sprint. Mechanics shout. A handful of pilots break into a run. Then Marina pops her head up from the cockpit, eyes wide, hair wild, laughing like someone who has cheated death twice in one night. "I'm fine," she yells. "But someone owes me a new seat cushion." The camp erupts in relieved applause. Within minutes, the women gather in a loose circle near the edge of the runway. Their breaths puff in white clouds. Their coats steam in the early sun. They look as battered as their planes. Soot-smudged, shivering, eyes rimmed with red. But there's a glow among them. A quiet triumph. Bershanskia steps into the center. "Comrades," she says, her voice hoarse, "the camp is in ruins. Artillery, fuel, vehicles, command. All crippled. The Germans won't forget this night." She pauses. "And neither will we." A few women smile. Others simply close their eyes, letting the warmth of the sunrise wash over them. In another hour, they'll be writing reports, repairing planes, eating whatever passes for breakfast. By evening, they will sleep in shifts. And by nightfall, they'll fly again. Because that is what night witches do. They return to the sky. Even when the sky tries to kill them. Dawn finally cracked over the treetops like a slow bleeding wound, staining the eastern sky with a thin line of red. The forest was quiet now. Too quiet. Broken only by the faint ticking of cooling metal as Nadia's PO2 sat tilted in the grass, its wing fabric torn but intact. She stood beside it. Goggles pushed up into her hair, breath fogging in the cold as she watched the horizon brighten. Behind her, the other women of the 588th trickled in from their own landings. Some perfect, some rough, some in fields miles apart, guided back by hand flares and shouted names. Yevdokia limped toward her, still flushed with adrenaline, her scarf trailing behind her like a victory banner. Nadia exhaled, shaky but alive. They all were. Somehow. Hours earlier they had been nothing but ghosts, silent gliders slipping through German fire and night wind. Now, in daylight, they looked like exactly what they were, exhausted young women in oil-stained overalls, unlacing boots, laughing too loudly from relief. The spell was broken, but the legend was just beginning to take shape. A jeep from headquarters rattled down the muddy track toward the field, skidding to a stop as Colonel Krasilnikov jumped out and marched straight toward the cluster of pilots. He stopped in front of Nadia and the others, his expression somewhere between disbelief and pride. "Reports are coming in," he said, breathless. "You destroyed their ammunition dump. Their vehicles. Their barracks. The Germans are." He paused, searching for the right word. "They're furious. They said." He hesitated again, almost smiling. "They said they were attacked by witches." A few of the women exchanged confused looks. Then Yevdokia arched a brow. "Witches?" Krasilnikov nodded. "Yes. They swear you flew on broomsticks. That you didn't make a sound. That you disappeared before bullets could touch you." He leaned closer. "They say you're gliding, the way your planes whisper, sounded like broom bristles brushing the air." A laugh escaped Nadia. Small, disbelieving, incredulous. "Witches," she repeated softly. "Night witches," Yevdokia corrected, smirking as she wiped soot from her cheek with the back of her sleeve. The name stuck like flint catching spark. By noon, it had spread through the regiment. By nightfall, through headquarters. Within a week, German officers were warning their troops not to linger outside after dark. Because the Nachtvechsen might already be in the air, circling unseen above the treetops. Soldiers began firing at shadows, flinching at the rustle of wind through branches. Their fear became a weapon. One just as sharp as any bomb the women carried. And the women embraced it. The next night, when Nadia climbed once more into her patched-together PO2, she felt something she hadn't expected. Not dread, or even anticipation, but purpose. A strange, quiet confidence, as if the sky itself had opened a place for them. As if invisibility, once a limitation, had become their greatest advantage. She glanced over at Yevdokia in the other cockpit, watching her tighten her harness with steady hands. "Ready?" Nadia asked. Yevdokia grinned. "A witch is always ready." Engines sputtered to life across the field. 90 horsepower, underpowered, outdated, and perfect for the impossible task ahead. The aircraft rattled and shook under them, loyal in its own stubborn, fragile way. Nadia pressed the throttle. The plane lurched forward, wheels cutting twin lines in the dew-soaked grass. As they lifted off, the sun sank behind the horizon and the moon rose pale and thin, washing the sky in silver. The air cooled. The ground fell away. And then, when they were high enough, far enough, brave enough, Nadia cut the engine. The world went silent. Silent as breath held in fear. Silent as a secret carried through the dark. Silent as the glide of witches crossing enemy lines. Only the wind remained, whistling softly against wood and canvas as the PO2 transformed once more into a shadows creature, slipping across the front unseen. And this time, Nadia didn't fly with her heart pounding in terror. She flew with the calm certainty of someone who knows exactly what she has become. A whisper in the night. A name the enemy feared. A legend that would outlive the war. The night witches returned to battle, and history followed in their wake.